I think what NFTs allows is it allows to tie up a ton of different like ideological tenets that we all agree upon, which is like the permissionless side of blockchain, allowing people to have their full ownership of their own identity, right? Like even now we're struggling with data ownership, the right to your own financial data, the right to your own even we won't get this deep, but even like the right to your own speech, and so like we wanted a system for people to own that right, because we knew at some point we were going to take a simple product like simplifying the routing of a transaction to something a lot more robust, right? And where it's going to be a fleet of different products that are all based around ownership of your identity. And yeah, like you said, NFTs and the asset model on Cardano has allowed us to do that really, really smoothly.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Woodland Pools. I am so excited to finally sit down with the Goose from adaHandle.
Very nice to meet you.
Thank you for sitting down with me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for coming up and asking me to come do an interview. It's been a while.
It's been a while, I think. So I think we maybe first met each other at, it must have been a Rare Bloom, like 2 years ago.
Yep.
And a lot has happened since then.
So much has happened since then, not only with like the evolution of Rare Evo, but also from our company's perspective throughout the whole bear market, and probably everyone else in Cardano feeling something very similar, and just feeling like you're building through mud, right? And it's like it feels like it's very slow, but you're just trudging along. So it's been very much that.
It's been a slog.
Yeah.
But so how about this for folks? We've talked about adaHandle. It's one of the projects probably talk most about. There's like a handful of projects talk about, and adaHandle is one of them. But for those, if someone's living under a rock that doesn't know what adaHandle is, right? What is like the elevator pitch? What's the value proposition of what you guys do and why it's important?
Yeah, so adaHandle is, I'll just do the elevator pitch.
Sure.
So adaHandle is an NFT-based naming convention for Cardano. So what a handle does is it takes the cryptographic address that is mandatory for transactions on Cardano, and it simplifies that into human form. So instead of some long unreadable hash, you get your name or nickname, your moniker, call sign, etc. Think Cash App for blockchain.
Yeah.
And handles have always been that. They've been that since 2021. But since then, we've been building. We have built basically this massive depot of identity-based solutions, and these are things that future build-outs are things that we have built. So things like censorship-resistant chat powered by handles, things like easy-to-use peer-to-peer payment systems for mobile, and then things that we have built already, like personalization for your blockchain identity that you use through your handle. And in fact, what we're going to launch here soon enough, in about 2 weeks, subHandles.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the evolution of taking this very simple product and turning it into this identity-based solution that you can use in a multitude of different ways on a multitude of different apps.
It's really cool, and what I like about it too, that even just at your base product, right, the simplest one that you launched like over at this point 2 years ago, right? Is I think for people, it's the kind of thing where like that a concept that people are already used to but maybe don't realize it, right? Which is like the notion of like a DNS entry, right? Like when you go to google.com, you don't memorize the IP address that happens to be serving up Google. You type in google.com, and then the DNS server is like, okay, when you type Google, what you meant is this IP address that's here, and it routes you to there. So everybody, like anybody who's watching this on YouTube, for example, didn't type in like 257 dot whatever, they typed in YouTube, and that's what brought you there. And so people already use this technology all the time, but maybe like don't even think about it because it's become so second nature.
Right.
And so I think that the really cool thing that you guys did in such an elegant and simple way is like, it makes people really nervous when you're like first getting into crypto and you're sending a transaction and you have this cryptographically derived address that is like, I should know this, but I don't know the exact length, but it's like however many characters long.
Yeah.
And you got to check every single one, and it's kind of really like nerve-wracking.
Totally.
Because they all blur together.
Totally.
So I've always loved the idea in its simplicity, where it's just like literally like my wallet is $Woodland Pools. That's it.
I mean, like,
so it's amazing. So that way, if I need to send stuff between my wallets, or I have friends like in the book community that they're like hey, can you pick me up a book? Like, no problem. What do I send it to? It's like whatever, and that's it. And everybody uses adaHandles now, and it's just like it's the brilliance and the elegance of it, and very nicely done.
Yeah. So like It's what you had just explained about, like, instead of people actually doing the raw data of the DNS, like very similar to how financial transactions exist today. Nobody remembers your accounting and routing number combination.
Right.
I'm not gonna put in X amount of digits to send you funds. I'm gonna go to a financial application like Cash App or Venmo or Zelle, and I'm gonna use their human simplified address to route funds to your bank account.
Yeah, Zelle is the best example because that's something that's launched and run by banks. So it's literally the exact same thing, right? That you guys are doing. So it's a thing that's very much needed, and it works great. And the thing what I like about it too, the way that you guys do it, is the fact that it's NFT based, and the fact that it sits inside of your wallet. So it's not some kind of a registry you have to always be like paying to or whatever else. Like that's the thing. Like I've talked, Patrick and from Endmaker. We've known each other for years now, and like one of the first things when NFTs were first getting big, and I was trying to wrap my head around what they were. He's the one that like helped me like finally understand that it's like, at the end of the day, there's all different kinds of NFTs, and now of course I work at Book, and we do like all different kinds of media and stuff. But the whole point of it, at the end of the idea, is that the NFT, the sort of the stem cell of what an NFT is across all of them, is just proof of ownership of a thing.
Yeah.
And that could be a picture of a monkey, right? Or it could be a book or a movie, or it could be like, this is your identity and where funds should be routed to. And so I think the idea to use NFTs for that was a really, really great design choice that other chains aren't necessarily doing.
Right.
And it's a really, really nice design.
I think what NFTs allows is it allows to tie up a ton of different like ideological tenets that we all agree upon, which is like the permissionless side of blockchain, allowing people to have their full ownership of their own identity, right? Like even now we're struggling with data ownership, the right to your own financial data, the right to your own even we won't get this deep, but even like the right to your own speech. And so like we wanted a system for people to own that right, because we knew at some point we were going to take a simple product like simplifying the routing of a transaction to something a lot more robust, right? And where it's going to be a fleet of different products that are all based around ownership of your identity. And yeah, like you said, NFTs and the asset model on Cardano has allowed us to do that really, really smoothly. So
yeah, and I know too, as you talk about some of the newer stuff you have coming out, and personalization, which has now been out for a little while, and on its surface, it's cool. Like you can like make it look however you want and whatever else. But I've read some of the stuff that you've written where it's interesting hearing sort of your vision for it, because it sounds like from a philosophical standpoint, the goal of where it can go is much further than instead of having it just be like the black and white and green, like I wanted to have a space bud or whatever. Like I know that for some people it's kind of like, okay, that's kind of gimmicky and fun, but I know that like you put a lot of thought behind like what this can be, and you've written some really good articles about it. So like maybe you can like, what's sort of your mind like the philosophy and the spirit behind where that's going and why?
Right. So personalization, right? To make it palpable at first is sort of the novel idea of like being able to come in and personalize your handle and make it fun, make it colorful, like being able to share that handle in a way that's sort of akin to like sharing your PFP, right? It's like, it's this fun part of adaHandle, and that was kind of our like, okay, how do we get people to understand personalization at a core level? Because at some point, and this is up to our integrators from different dApps, is like you can actually touch the contract and modify the data in ways where things become default. And if you go to say SundaySwap's pulling in that data, and SundaySwap can say, hey, this is the specific currency of the jurisdiction that you live in, so we're going to take all of the trades that you make, and that's going to be your base currency. So if I'm from the United States and I go into SundaySwap, and it recognizes in my handle that that's where I'm from, and I'm going to immediately default start trading in USD pairs. And so it's like, you can take that and branch out to any sort of different dApp and how they want to have their users come in and have a personalized experience from the get-go. And so that's kind of where we started to take that.
That's really cool. And I remember now, because we've been talking about it for so long, that I remember now, like one of the first things that you had written about that I was excited about, that you just got me thinking about, was even things like localization of currency is one, but even a simpler one that is more polarizing is just like light mode versus dark mode, right?
Yeah, right.
And so like, and that's one because at Book, for example, like that's one of the things where across all of our apps, we've now added the ability for light mode and dark mode. And we have these conversations with the engineers all the time about like, how do we want to handle that kind of persistence of the user preferences, and do you want it to be like cross-platform?
Yeah.
So like which things are cross-platform, which ones aren't, right? And stuff like that. And so light mode and dark mode is one that we've talked about a lot. But actually, as you were talking, the gears are turning in my head. I was like, because do you guys support that right now, personalization?
Yes. If anyone wants to go in the contract itself and start to modify the data, like that's there.
That's really interesting because. I would love to talk to you more about this
it's
after.
So would I. It's likely on our job to start to market that a little more. Now that people have like had time to actually interact with personalization, they get it from a novel perspective. It's probably our job to do that and like really start to get people's heads around like how like personal their experience on blockchain can be from one app to the other, and sort of make this ubiquitous ecosystem of like, I go to Book.io and I have my whole personal experience there. I go to Sunday Swap, I have my whole personal experience there, and it's all because you have an NFT in your wallet.
And it goes with you, which I think is so cool. Like, because what I was just thinking about, like, we could literally do is like, for example, you like go to the Book or Stuff website, you connect your wallet, right? And then when you do that, if it's got a personalized adaHandle, a little pop-up says, hey, I can tell that you prefer dark mode. Would you like to update your user preferences to be in dark mode? And it's like, cool. So that way users can have both. So we don't necessarily like force update it if they don't. But the cool thing though is that like, imagine that user experience, like how elegant that would be, where you come in and it's like, hey,
how the heck did it know that?
I see that you like dark mode. Do you want to do that? And you're like, that would actually be pretty cool. Yeah.
Scary, but okay. How'd you know that?
We should do that. We should talk more about that.
I would love to.
That'd be really fun.
That would be cool.
Cool. So that's one thing. But I know also too that you talked about like how the notion of personalization. So it starts with that simple things, right? Like let's say, how you modify the world to you and your experience, right? But then I know you've also put thought though into then what it means long term in terms of how it starts like forming your digital identity and representation of then how you present yourself to the world, right? And so right. What are some of your thoughts about where handles and personalization stuff can go in terms of like identity? Because I know you guys have talked about DIDs and how that might integrate, and I don't know if maybe that's still like really far out, but I'm just curious sort of your long-term idea.
Identity is such a fluid topic, and it's fluid because it's so early. Like the identity that we are striving for, the tenets of it haven't really been built yet. And so I'm talking mostly like, the W3C and SSI, and like that would sort of be the foundation of where we want to head in terms of identity, because it feels the most synergistic to like blockchain ideology. And like I said, it's very fluid there. And so to try and plant a flag and say this is where we're going to go and have a good footing is a little hard. With that, personalization does allow us to maintain sort of structure in that fluidity, and like if we want to change things in terms of how we implement a DID methods into the personalization scheme, we could do that. And like we have the resources around us to advise us to do that, but like in terms of long-term vision, we're just trying to stay on the balls of our feet and be ready to make changes in terms of how we actually want to implement the DID side and the SSI side of identity, just to do it correctly. Because there's so many different things that would affect. Like for instance, we want to have a really good foothold in Cardano governance, like with Intersect and DREPs. And they're also in the same boat as us. It's like, how do we implement the identity side of DREPs, and what DID method are we subscribing to, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's like everybody's trying to figure out what is sort of the correct path, the golden path. And so we're just kind of keeping our ears, our pulse on what that is, and staying on the balls of our feet and being nimble, and like, okay, this is the route we're going to take. This is going to allow handles to most effectively be I don't want to say pervasive, but pervasive through the ecosystem.
Yeah, and it's, and when you say that too, like I think it's for some people, like a lot of people I think maybe don't even know like SSI, like self-sovereign identity, like is something where like Charles and other people talk a lot about identity and what that means for governance and some of these other things. But I think what maybe a lot of people don't realize is that the notion of self-sovereign identity predates blockchain by a lot.
Oh yeah.
And there are, to your point, there are like, because I went through the Atala Prison Pioneers program, and like, so that really just like opened my mind. I thought it was going to be a simple thing like, great, let's wire up a little smart contract and we're good to go. And then you realize like, oh, there are like global groups of people with very active like lobbying efforts that have been trying to figure out standards for this for like a decade. You know what I mean? So it's just, or longer. And so it's a really interesting problem that blockchain can help with, but it is sort of that interesting challenge where now it can solve it in a really good way, but now it's meeting up with something that's been like a legacy system of like standards that's been around for a really long time. So to your point, it's like it would be tough to try and like even like guess where that's going because there's so many moving parts and so many different jurisdictions and like that's the whole other thing too, right? It's like what your identity means in one place doesn't necessarily translate to the other, and we have no global standard on that yet. So that's an interesting problem.
Yeah, and I think a really cool combination is how do you combine the NFT aspect / blockchain aspect with DID methods. And so we've come up with some cool solutions we're probably not ready to talk about yet.
Sure.
But some really cool synergies on like how to leverage NFTs to make strong DID methods.
Yeah.
And so we're excited to start to dive more into that path. I think we have a few more features that we want to build out that I think are a little more like product market fit ready. Before we get into real depths of identity.
And so the whole idea too of like DIDs and digital identity and the way that you choose to represent yourself. What's cool about the concept of digital identity and DIDs is that like that idea that you only disclose what you need to, which is really cool, right? Whereas like you can have like for like the example that that always stuck with me is that like when you go to a bar and the only thing you're trying to prove is that you're of legal drinking age, right? But to prove you're of legal drinking age, you're showing this bouncer your full name, your home address, and all stuff just to prove that yes, I'm of legal drinking age in this country, right? Where all they need to know is they don't even need to know your birthday. They just need to have a Boolean that says yes or no. I am old enough or I'm not, right? And so like it's that that idea, when you think of it that way, you're like, why do we expose all of this information that's so much more than we need to for just like a thing that just like they should just check and it should pass or fail. Like, yes, they can drink, no, they can't, right? And so like that's what, when you think about digital identity, for me, what really kind of like unlocked it for me. It's like, oh yeah, you could have a thing that kind of holds all your information, and depending on the venue that you're interacting with, you as the consumer just choose what you want to show. So when you talk about like where personalization could go, it's really cool to think of it in that way. Like maybe you just want to expose only I prefer light mode or dark mode, or maybe whatever else. So anyway, it's a really cool philosophical conversation of where it can all go.
I probably should say this, but like the way we've been like, how do we market it, and like what would we call our sort of like DID identity solution? Someone made a good point too, very similar to like the amount of information you can extract from a single piece of identification, being your driver's license. Same way with a handshake. When you meet someone and you shake their hand, you're picking up on so many different tells that give you information about that person.
I was actually just thinking this today.
And so like that was sort of going to be like our maybe we should cut that out, because that's going to be like how we're going to like talk about how we do DIDs and identity. But like a handshake can tell so much, and
cool. So with that, I know it. We kind of got like philosophical there for a little bit because I think some of these things
it's easy to get philosophical
in blockchain, right? So it's because it's a lot of this also too. It's like to a certain degree, this is the third rare event, right? And we've all been around this space now for 5, 6, 7 years, depending on like how long we've each been involved, and all of this is like still brand new, which is really exciting. I mean, the fact that like you guys were even able to launch the product that you did shows how early that we are, right? That it's kind of like, why is nobody doing that? Like, we should probably do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, I was going to say this earlier too, is like when any blockchain starts, but like when we were in, at the time, like 2020, like you just had raw data everywhere. And it's really about like, if you want to commercialize that, it's finding the pocket of raw data that you want to take and you want to build a product on. And for us, it was, it was the address, and it was like, how do we take this raw piece of data that nobody wants to interact with and turn it into something that's like, I don't even know I'm interacting with it.
I love that. And one of the things, that's why like on the channel, like I primarily love focusing on, two categories, either projects that solve actual real external problems. That's why like for a long time I was covering Book before I joined World Mobile. But then the other category that I just love always talking about are infrastructure projects, right? You guys, NMaker, Maestro, like it's like, because you need stuff like that to make it easier for people to be able to use it and then have the other experiences that they're going to have. And so I really appreciate that you guys jumped on that so early, because it's absolutely a needed thing. Like at this point now, like I don't know anybody that shares their address. Everybody just shares their adaHandle now, right? And like when wallets come out, I remember when IOG first launched Lace, and they're like, what do you guys think? I'm like, you don't have adaHandle support. I'm like, I'm not going to use it.
Like,
that
was a good, it's crazy.
That was like literally, I was like, you don't have adaHandle support. So like, let me know when that's added,
It is crazy the pull that the community has that they can leverage when they're like, I'm not going to, because I remember that, and we were like, man, we really want to get into this IOHK built product. And it's like similar to all the other wallets, like why can't we do it there? And the community really, like, thank God for the community. They were just like, get it on there, and we're not using it.
Yeah,
it works.
I was like, every other, like, they're all basically to a certain degree indiscernible from each other, the different wallets. But I'm gonna like use the one that makes it harder to send transactions. Like, I'm not gonna do that. So like, so I'm glad because it was funny. Remember their initial response was kind of like a lukewarm response, like, well, we'll see, and we'll look into it. And there's different standards and whatever. And I'm like, all right, you guys figure that out because I'm not gonna use it. And then sure enough, it was like a month later. You know, they were like, hey, we're adding adaHandle support. I'm like, good idea.
I think,
you know, like,
well,
that's what it was when they did their open beta. That's what it was.
Yeah,
and that
because
opened it up.
These teams, they're made up of Cardano community members. So I think what happened was, it was at the last Rare Evo, because Lace had their opening booth, right?
Yeah.
It was like the first introduction to the community and Lace. And one of the community members were on an interview, and I don't know if he was like allowed to, but he was like, oh, I love adaHandles, and I really want to get adaHandles in there. And I don't know if he was supposed to say that, but then it just snowballed from there, and we're like, okay, we found our in. This guy loves it.
That's awesome. So anyway, so with all of that then, something you kind of alluded to at the very beginning, that this next sort of big thing that you guys have coming out is the concept of subhandles, which is really cool as well in terms of like how you can do organizations and things like that. So maybe talk through again like the why of like subhandles, and then we can get into sort of like how they're actually manifesting what you're doing with them.
Subhandles is hard because there are so many different use cases, and it's hard to choose which one's going to be the most marketable, which one's going to be the most important. And there's also two different kinds. Like for instance, you have the virtual side of subhandles, which is an entirely different subset of subhandles than NFT subhandles.
Right.
And then you'd have different use cases for two. So for instance,
so what is a subhandle? Let's start there.
Good point. So subhandles is a parent-child relationship between a root handle owner or a primary handle owner, which is the handle that everybody owns right now, right? Subhandles hasn't hit the market yet, so everybody who has a handle, you have a root handle, you have a primary handle. And subhandles is going to allow the user to create this parent-child relationship between their root handle and all subsequent handles minted to that root handle. So for instance, your handle is...
Yeah, Woodland Pools, for example.
Your handle, Woodland
or even
Pools.
like Book could just be like, you know, like the book one. Book is a better one because you have an organization that can do it. So like, let's say Book has one or stuff, right, or whatever.
Let's say Book has their handle, and they have... Let's do it from the corporate point of view. And they have all of their employees, they have their producers, they have these, you know, people who are like supplying media to the Book.io ecosystem. And we want to organize how we either get information to those producers, to those employees, etc. A good way to do that is to supply them with virtual subhandles. Why virtual subhandles? It's because the Book.io root handle will have a much more control in terms of like being able to modify, being able to revocate, just as any employer would have in terms of like financial information
or an email address,
employee information of their employees.
Yeah, just the same way how you'd have like, you know, you would be Goose at Book, and then while you're there you have that email, and then when you leave you don't, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not like you own that email. It was ephemerally granted to you during the time that you had that employment, right?
And then you know if you wanted to extend, or if the root handle owner allows the option to extend how long you want that subhandle, you'll be able to extend it. If not, then you know that's completely up to the discretion of the root handle owner. So that would be one corporate use case for virtual subhandles. NFT subhandles, that could be, for instance, like we're working with the guys at Drip Drops, and they're doing these STEM packages. So they're like little educational packages of Cardano.
Oh, sure.
And there would be, you know, a little card that has a subhandle that relates to whatever, you know, event that they're at, like event at subhandle.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And those would all be NFT based, because each stem product, or like each stem box is its own, it's its own asset.
Yeah.
And so that would be like one way you could easily organize from event to event a way to disperse subhandles. And get people integrated into Cardano, more familiar with it on a cheap cost basis, because you know the subhandles are obviously going to be cheaper than primary handles. Again, but that's up to the discretion of the root handle owner. So that's another thing too, is like the root handle owner has the discretion to set prices of their own subhandles, right? Because if they recognize the value that they minted Bob, right, and everybody wants a piece of Bob, you know, he could set the prices to be more expensive, and like that's completely up to him or her. And
yeah, so because the cool thing about that, and so remind me, what's the like the actual readable format of how they're going to read? Like if so Bob, let's use Bob as an example. Yeah. So Bob decides. So the book one is simple because that's an ephemeral thing that the order doesn't necessarily matter as much because it's more of just like the logic of it. But for like the Bob thing, like how is it actually going to read? Like on the way the subhandle works?
So it would be subhandle at root handle.
Okay.
So it would be if it was my name is the subhandle, it would be my name is at Bob.
Got it. Yeah. Well, but so because what's interesting about it is, and we had like one guy in our community who was talking about something similar where he has a pretty generic one, and then what you can do is you can like have you could sell subhandles to people in terms of like last name, first name, right? So it's like if a guy named Bob Smith, he would buy Smith at Bob, right? Yeah. You know, like Bob Jeffries would buy Jeffries at Bob, you know what I mean, kind of thing.
And so like, you know, your average user who has a valuable primary handle has the opportunity to monetize their handle, like and like have a financialization process of an asset that they own.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool, and it's really cool that you guys opened it up in that way that made it then that like the user is the one that can monetize it. Is really neat.
I think it just goes back to why did we do NFT-based naming convention in the first place? Like we want to give people more power to own and to financialize and monetize themselves. And so subhandles is just an extension of that belief. Like give everybody else the opportunity to be their own registrar. Give everybody else the opportunity to federate their own handles and make their own business out of it. Like, you know, if you have, say you have like 3 or 4 or 5 like really good primary handles, and you get 100 different people paying a monthly fee to own that, like you have a recurring revenue business.
Yeah, that's cool. So. That's really cool. Nice. Well, so anyway, so this is the first time we've had a chance to actually sit down in this way, and we're here at Rare Evo 2024. And so what I like doing for these kinds of things is making it kind of an anniversary, and we loop back, the next trip around the sun when we come back, right?
Oh my goodness, I think in 12 months we're going to have so much more to talk about.
So there we go. So that's what I was going to say, is that because it makes it a nice sort of milestone to look back on, right? Yeah. So it's like, oh, the last time we were here.
And then I'm going to, next time, be like, we got none of it.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, it'll be a nice short chat, you know? But so anyway, so with that, right, like looking forward 12 months from now, we sit down again, we do Rare Evo 2025. What are you hoping to see from adaHandle in the next year?
2 things. My 2 biggest things. I want a easy to use public facing application. So if I'm walking around Rare Evo, I'm having dinner, I'm out with friends, I want handle to be a click away.
Yeah.
And the application for that is, the concepts of that application are being built out now. We're likely, we didn't participate in this last fund.
The Catalyst.
Last Catalyst fund. We will be participating in this next fund to build that application.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's going to be Cash App.
Okay.
But obviously, like, we're going to be stepping on toes and like, okay, well, wouldn't it just, if it's a peer-to-peer payment system, wouldn't it just be like a mobile wallet like Vesper? Sure. Like, do we get into our own? Like, do we become our own wallet, or do we get? Are we powered by X wallet?
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so these are all like concepts and ideas that we're working with. But for instance, like say you go out to dinner and you want like a photo real time of the receipt so that you can send out like who paid for who got this meal, who got this meal, and you pay it all with Ada right through your handle. And it's all right there, a click of a button away, and obviously other features that we've talked about that we won't get into right now that exist on that platform, like for instance, we broke down like Cash App's, how do they make money?
Right.
They have 3 or 4 main sources, and it's funny because you would think, transaction processing and taking a fee on that would be a major portion.
Sure,
That's the main thing you do. It's not. Their biggest revenue source is buying Bitcoin from the Cash App application.
Oh, okay.
How do we make something similar?
Yeah.
And so like, why don't we partner with a very close, DEX to allow people right from the application to just utilize a process to be able to find exposure in the market right from their hands. So it's really like a play on it's really a play on ease of use, because a lot of these things already exist, right? I can send mobile payments, using Cardano right now, using my handle on Vesper.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really a play on like, why is this going to be easy? What are the features that are like don't exist today? For instance, like tip sharing. For instance, like check sharing with your friends, or you're on a trip and you have an itinerary list of all the things that you did, and at the end of the trip you say, okay, I've divvied out who owes me this and who owes me that, and it's super simple. It's a click of a button, and everybody's using their handle. It's all paid in ADA or USD. But yeah, that's like our main goal. Is like we want an application for people to use handles that's like in their pocket.
I love that.
Yeah.
Really cool.
And then secondly,
oh yeah, sure, yeah, no, please, yeah.
But this one should be quicker. We're going to launch our own token. So,
okay.
So Handle will have its own token for a multitude of different things, right? There's like the top 3: governance, utility, and I'm blanking on the last one. But it's for all of it, right? Because at some point, as I said earlier, like it's this massive depot of identity-based products, and it's this ecosystem that's going to exist, and having a token to navigate that ecosystem. But also, having a token to vote on like where that ecosystem needs to go or should go. And so yeah, so at some point within the next 12 months, we're gonna have the HNDL token.
Nice, that's awesome. Well, cool, man. I really appreciate the time. Any sort of last thoughts for folks, or ways they can find out more information if they want to get more involved or keep up with what's going on with adaHandle?
Yeah, totally. So if you want more information, there's no better spot than come straight to our Twitter at adaHandle, ADAHANDLE. If you want to dive right into the ecosystem, you want to mint your own handle if you haven't minted one yet, https://handle.me, and you'll be able to enter the ecosystem right from there. Other than that, I thank you so much for having me today.
Goose,
it's been super
an
awesome.
Absolute pleasure. So glad I got to do this. If you guys have any questions for the adaHandle team or want to find out more information, check out the description below, or leave any comments for things that you want them to know, or feedback that you have for the team. And if nothing else, we'll see you in the next one, guys.